Okay, here we go. So welcome everybody.
And I'm just going to put myself, here we go. Yeah, so good evening, good morning. Wonderful to be back again. I hope you had an interesting enough week and lots of food for thought. We're going to continue. So we're on class 2 now of the healing anxiety and depression, or beyond anxiety and depression, how to integrate theory into real life, because that's the thing. Everything can sound like it makes sense, but then, at least in my own experience, when I go to apply it, suddenly I either get stage fright, or everything just, what was crystal clear a moment ago has just become all muddy and I can't differentiate anything. Or I kind of go, I get a bit anxious and not go into shock, but just can't tell what's happening anymore, like too tense to be able to actually see what's right there in front of my very eyes. So many times this can happen where everything goes along fine when we're in a fairly neutral state. But when real life happens, things change, disasters, even possibly good things happen to us, we lose all of our newly found wisdom and kind of revert back to our default habit patterns. So that's what we're trying to stop in this course, to really start making new habit patterns that we can rely on, that are really strong, that are our automatic go-to. So we're changing our whole inner environment, which is basically the huge paradigm shift of Buddhist psychology. So if you've got time to look at the videos from the first course that I led, was chock full of new information and the Buddhist kind of radical psychology, but we had very little time for discussion. So this course, there's a lot more time for discussion and your questions. So I hope you've come along with questions and problems and mysteries and the whole lot. And I'm also going to be going through some of the reflection sheets of the course, just to get us started with questions, because questioning is the way to go. Questioning somehow means that we get out of our ordinary track and start a new way of thinking. So what we're looking at today is about identity, issues of how we develop our sense of worth, of self-respect, self-esteem, and the difference between that of having real self-respect and of having afflictive pride. So what the differences are, because it can be quite tricky in practice, this one, and it's very easy to accidentally corrupt our good intentions. And also we can be very, very hard on ourselves and very judgmental. In fact, I'd almost go so far as to say very mean towards ourselves, in a way that our gurus, the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, and even our friends would never treat us like that, and yet we treat ourselves like that. So how to get rid of the afflictive pride and develop Bodhisattva pride, the positive prides. So let's start with a short meditation, just to focus our attention. Settling body and mind. So we might have been here for a few minutes, adjusting to being together online in this wonderful virtual connection. But what we really want to do is become an inner being. So bringing our attention from where we are in the room inwards to our inner state. So we can start just by settling our posture, making sure that we are comfortable to start with, and then that our spine, our back is relatively straight, so that our physical energy can flow freely. We're not all scrunched up. but it also means that our concentration is easier. So a relatively straight spine, a relaxed body, feel that you release any tension, especially from the neck and the shoulders. Feel it just flowing down the neck, along the shoulders and off the tips of the shoulders. And at the same time as you're relaxing, don't let it run away with you. What we want to do is relax, but also stay alert. So while you're relaxing your body, you're keeping your spine straight and an attitude of being ready to be in the class, of being happy to be here. If you have your hands in your lap, have your elbows a little out from the torso. They say that your arms, it feels like the wings of a bird about to take flight. So this gives us this attitude of readiness and relaxation. Spend a couple of moments bringing your attention to the natural rhythm of your breathing. Just becoming aware of the rolling rhythm of the breath, breathing in, breathing out. If your mind is very busy, you can say in and out as you're breathing, as a way of anchoring your attention to the breath. And as you do so, you might find thoughts intruding, memories, maybe emotions. But as you become aware of them, then let them go. Just like autumn leaves coming to rest once the wind has stopped. So it doesn't matter that any thoughts or intrusions come into the mind. Our task is to not latch onto them, but to let them just naturally subside. And how we do that is just notice and name, oh, it's a thought, or it's a feeling, and bring your focus back to the breath. And feel that inner whirlwind gradually come to slow and become still. Just like our body is still in the room, so our mind can become still, just gently focused on the breath. And from this relaxed but alert state of mind, then we can remember our purpose for being here. Why are we here? What are our most pressing concerns? But inevitably, there's something much bigger behind them. What's our ultimate purpose for being here? And really, from a Buddhist psychology point of view, it is about being able to observe cause and effect, to be able to harness the power of cause and effect in our life so that we can achieve the happiness that we yearn for. We can remove problems. And we don't do this just by wishing or hoping. We actually have the power to do it. So taking refuge from the Buddhist point of view means observing cause and effect. And how we can do this is by recognizing that there are people and beings who've gone before us who've been able to do this, achieve what we want to, achieve lasting happiness, liberate themselves from all problems and suffering. And these beings, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, have shown us the way how we can as well. And how we do this is by applying in our own mind. So we can think or feel that the Buddha arises in the space before us, radiant, golden, made of light, but very much alive. This entire experience, even though you are imagining the Buddha in front of you, it's happening in your mind. It's not separate from you. The Buddha is like a mirror of your potential. The Buddha sees you fully and simultaneously sees all surrounding sentient beings. Without judgment, without criticism, loving you, knowing you, accepting you, with infinite kindness, infinite wisdom. So let your heart relax. And when we recite the refuge and bodhicitta prayer, we can do this on behalf of ourselves and everyone in the same boat as us. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So feeling our refuge is in the guidance of the Buddha, in observing cause and effect and harnessing the power of cause and effect in our own life, and taking the inspiration from those who've gone before us, the Supreme Assembly, those who show it can be done. And our purpose being not just for ourselves, but to help everybody else just like us, who suffer just as we do, and who yearn for happiness and freedom just as we do. And so with this altruistic motivation, you can bring your focus back to the room, and I can give a little introduction about today's topic. So we're looking at pride. So normally when we talk about pride, we're talking about afflictive pride or distorted pride. And this is a really tricky one, because the thing that terrified me about pride was that you don't know you have it. When you have it, you don't know you have it. And this is what's so frightening, because it's almost like you don't know yourself. You don't know your own measure, and you can't trust yourself. So to recognize that we have pride, we've got to come at it sideways and see, well, what are the results of pride, and do I have those results? And if I do, then, oh dear, I've got afflicted pride. So how do we know if we have pride? Let's see. Have any of these experiences ever happened to you? Being shy, being intimidated, fear of public speaking. So all of these things, you might think, hang on a second, that's not pride, that's just having no confidence. But actually that's what's called upside down pride. It's kind of like reverse pride, where we feel so bad. And so many of us might have this experience of intimidation, and that's a surefire sign that we're suffering from afflictive pride. Other examples of pride, how we can tell that we've got it, is if we feel quite confident, but very alienated, very alone, or like nobody else measures up to us, or nobody else can join us. So that kind of feeling of aloneness, alienation, even loneliness also is a sign that we have pride. The other sign that we have pride is if we're hypercritical. So hypercritical is one of those double-edged swords. We can be very critical of others, but then every now and again it can flip around and we're hypercritical of ourselves. The two don't usually go together at the same time. So tell me, does this ring a bell with anybody? Oh yeah, Oren, okay, Wiley, okie dokie. So at least, I mean, the good thing about this is if you can see this happening in your own life, then you go, this is all to do with pride. So I've identified something, thank goodness. It's like, if you know there's a snake in the room, but you don't know where it is. Okay, so now we've got an idea. So the thing about pride with the definition, I'll get the definition up so that we can see. So I've got our most wanted poster. We've got to be able to identify it. That's why we've got the most wanted posters. Half the problem is finding where pride or distorted pride is operating in our mind. So I've got here Professor Pride. And how come Professor? Well, because professors are very learned, but some are super arrogant as well, and others, you just want to go to every single lecture that they're giving. So what's the difference there? So pride is where we have a puffed up sense of self-importance. So we have self-importance and an inflated self-opinion. And what makes this inflation or this sense of self-importance is we're drawing a distinction between ourselves and others by going, I'm better than you. So it puts this barrier between us. So you can imagine what the results of that barrier are when we compare, when we say me and you, separate, us and them. Where it comes from is deep, innate ignorance, a distorted view in particular of ourselves, of who we are, or what a human being is. So this is really deep, and it's compounded by intellectually acquired wrong views. So it's the whole spectrum, this one. And how pride works from this distorted view of ourselves, we gain our idea of who we are in comparison to others, by comparing ourselves to others. And because of our senses are all drawn outwards to the world, and because of our kind of innate, what's called self-grasping ignorance, we depend on external sources for validation. So what this means is that we only have a sense of who we are by being reflected back by others. You might think this isn't any problem, and while we're being reflected back nicely, it's great. But often it's not enough, is it? We still need constant reassurance. And when we are taken out of our comfort zone, as people say, so either we're thrown into a new job, or we visit a new country, or we move to a new suburb where everybody treats us differently because we're being reflected back differently, we lose our moorings. We can't tell who we are. We have culture shock. So has anyone here had culture shock, either from moving suburb or a job, or actually from going to another country? Yeah, Mary. So how did it manifest? How did you know that you had culture shock?
Well, I moved to Kentucky and I'm from New York, and it was like being in a different country. I mean, people behave so differently. So it was a big shock.
And then how did it make you feel? Like, did it make you feel a bit unmoored, or?
It made me feel really bad because they have this way of communicating that's not very nice. Like like everybody, like they talk about you behind your back, and then instead of somebody approaching you directly, they'll tell their friend, and then their friend will say something to you. It's, but then if you directly confront them, they get, or you try to speak directly to someone, they get very offended and angry.
Yeah. So that's a really big different culture, isn't it? So I don't know anything about New York except the movies, but what I've been able to gather is that you just say it, right? You're quite in your face, which to me I find terrifying. Because my whole background, of my mother was Latvian, and so Latvia is a Baltic country that has been under the finger of the oppressors for thousands of years. So everybody's very reserved, never says what they think, because it's a matter of self-preservation. So these cultural differences, different modes of communicating. What happens though, Mary, is that we ascribe meaning to that. So like you said, talking behind people's backs, or not saying it to your face, but getting somebody else to, how you read what that means, and how someone from, was it Kentucky?
Yes.
Yeah, has a totally different meaning. So they might actually think they're being polite and not in your face. So this is the thing, that what happens, we have the experience of difference, and we ascribe a meaning to it without even knowing that we're doing it. And we think how we experience it, that's real. We don't even question it. And yet you just talk to one other person and it's completely different. So you can see how it goes from just issues of identity and communication. Suddenly now we're at this self-grasping ignorance, and what's called in Western terms cognitive fusion, where we fuse the meaning and the thing and we think they're the same thing. So it's great. You've got something really obvious to work on now. But so tell me what I was interested in terms of pride. So did it make you feel different about yourself or your own worth?
It did. It was very upsetting, and I felt like I couldn't get along with anybody. And it took me a while kind of to figure out, that they just behave very different. Like I was basically in a different country, and so I felt really bad. And they were really, and in turn, since I was direct, and they found that very aggressive and unpolite, they became very hostile towards me. So it made me feel really bad.
Yeah. Yes, I hear you. I had a similar experience moving from Melbourne as a child. I was at an alternative school, and then as a late teenager, then I came up to Queensland under the Joh Bjelke-Petersen era, which was kind of a bit like a banana republic. There was an enormous amount of corruption and a really basic state school education system. And the school that I went to, it had one Italian person and everybody else was white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. And boy, oh boy, I suffered. That was the biggest culture shock I ever had. And so what I found so interesting, though, was people's perception of me, like you were saying. Because people perceived me differently, I acted differently. And so when I was in the alternative school in Melbourne, I was a very conservative, quiet child. And then I was kind of like the negotiator of the class. People would have issues and problems, whatever, and they'd all be having a great big spat. And when they were ready, then I'd come along and go, well, what do you reckon? And what do you reckon? And do the reconciliation. And so then when I came up to Queensland and everybody thought I was weirdo and outrageous, and I'm like, no, I'm the most conservative, cautious person I know, and yet you think I'm weird. I'll show you weird. So I got completely almost delinquent in it, because I just thought, no, I'm not, and yet you perceive me as this. Okay, I'll call you bluff, and I will be weird and outrageous if that's what you think I am. And this is what happens with a lot of juvenile delinquents, isn't it? If we underestimate the intelligence of children or teenagers and treat them like idiots, they're just going to go, well, I'll show you, idiot, and do that. And really, I've still got this attitude too. If someone treats me like some belligerent punk, then I'll go, well, up yours too. It's really contrary. So just by how people reflect you back, doesn't that elicit the response? It's so circumstantial. So it kind of takes us to, well, who am I? What makes up our identity? And how do we gauge our worth, our identity? Does anyone else have any questions or comments before we keep going? Does it ring any bells? Oh yeah, Kristen.
I just want to say to Mary, I had a very similar circumstance. I grew up in Ithaca, New York, which is kind of like this real hippie town. It was, at least when I was growing up. And when I was in high school, I had to move down to Tennessee. And this really kind of not friendly to me place. And I will add another thing that in the history books, I was in the middle of course of high school, and I was deep into like American history being taught to me, and the contrast of what I was taught in the North was just completely different. I was like, wait, I go down to Tennessee and I'm like, it sounds like the Confederates won the Civil War. Is this what you're telling me? This is not what I learned when I lived up north. So it was very almost frightening at a young age, because I thought, wow, how can the interpretation be so different? So anyway, yep. Mary, I can relate.
Yep. Yeah, actually I can relate too, because when I came to Queensland, it was 1980s, and so the history books here in Queensland talked about Australian Aborigines in the past tense. Australian Aborigines were hunter-gatherers, as if they weren't there anymore. So that I found really, really deeply shocking. And so all of this, when we talk about our culture, we've got to recognize that it's a result, and it's a result of us, where it's the manifestation of our afflictions and our assumptions and our disturbing emotions. So we can't kind of blame the external history like that, or the history books. What we've got to look at is go, this is a result of our collective afflictions. So it's up to us to do something about it. And at the same time, the fact that we have a school and we have an opportunity to learn to read is a result of our virtues and something to just be fiercely proud about. So there's two things happening there, and we've got to make sure that we have a balanced look at it. But many, many times, whenever I look at these problems, especially cultural ones, we've got to remember it's a result of us. Even if we focus on particular politicians, the politicians aren't the cause of our problems. They're the result of us. they're ours. Like they say, you know, you get the politicians you deserve. Well, it's not so much a thing of deserve, it's just cause and effect. So at least with experiences like that, I think especially when you move environment, you really see how much of you is a product of your environment and how much of you comes from within. And this is great to see that, to really see it in practice, the delineating line right there. Not to be judgmental about it, but just to gauge, because actually who we are is very malleable, and most of who we are, we'll find, is to do with our circumstances and nothing to do with what we think of as us at all, which is a bit ironic. So let's have a look at the prides. There's about 7 different types of afflictive pride. So I thought I'd just share the social pride slide. We've got pride where we feel superior to those who are inferior to us in skills, in their livelihood, in where they live, in their abilities, in their wealth. That's basically called vanity. So I've depicted these as living situations, you know, because that old saying of a man and his castle, you know, our home is our castle. And so if we look at those in an inferior living situation to us, say a homeless person living in a box, often what happens is we conflate their situation with the person. So instead of going an inferior living situation, a person in an inferior living situation, we go an inferior person, a lesser person. We have superior feelings, superior to our equals, which is just a sense of self-importance. So everybody in the street has status anxiety. We all want our house to be the better house than everybody else's house, comparing ourselves to our equals. And then feeling superior to our superiors, which is another way of saying arrogance. So where people are genuinely better at something than we are, more accomplished than we are, we get we find some little thing to pull them down. So in Australia, we have a thing called the tall poppy syndrome. And so this is where anyone in Australia who has success, we pull them down to size. We cannot bear success. And so what happens is then we the great Australian brain drain, where anyone who's good at anything just has to go overseas. Even that is a double-edged sword, because on one way, where we have a level kind of sense of keeping everyone in a sense of equality, but it doesn't actually play out that way, this tall poppy thing. So why do you think these 3 prides, these social prides, why do they happen? What do you reckon's going on there? Because I found even just saying someone is inferior, it's a bit of a taboo, isn't it? So why is that? Because clearly people are inferior to us in a multitude of ways. And clearly people are superior to us in a multitude of ways. But why can't we even say that? Because we've conflated the worth of a human being with what their skills are, or what their wealth is, or what their education is. So we've conflated the wealth of a human being with their status. The worth of a human being with their status, with their external situation. So there's been a thing happening in schools sometimes where everybody wins. So you have 30 kids in a class, everyone gets a medal, because if just the one person got a medal, then everybody else felt bad. So why do they feel bad? Because they've conflated not winning with not being a good human being. So it's almost like we've recognized that there's a problem there and we've gone the wrong way and gone, oh, well, everybody wins, which actually hasn't solved the problem, has it? Because one person can actually win and yep, they won, but it doesn't make them a better person. And it doesn't make everybody else a worse person. But we've conflated that winning that one thing, therefore they're a better human being. Why do we do that? Because we value someone by their external attributes. It's a really tricky thing, isn't it? It's almost impossible to see it in operation. But what we can do to get at it is just think for a moment. So what's something that you're really good at? Anybody, what's something that you're really good at doing? I know you've got things that you're good at doing. So who's got something that you're good at doing? See, you've got to be able to recognize your own qualities. So it might be a skill. So does anybody here drive? Anybody drive a car? Okay, anyone here fairly good at driving? Yeah, maybe. Abelardo, good. What about cooking? Is anyone here good at cooking? Yes, okay. So this is good. So Kristen, you're nodding. I can say, guaranteed, you are superior to me at cooking than I am. That's an absolute fact, because my cooking skills are pretty bad. And in fact, I managed to give all of my friends food poisoning in my 20s. So you are my superior in cooking. Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
That's right. So you got to own it. So it's nice, isn't it? So now you can feel good. Fantastic. I'm good at cooking. And I can be absolutely upfront and go, no, I am terrible at cooking. So far, so good, isn't it? It's a conventional relative truth. You are my superior, Kristen. You're my superior in cooking. Nice. But what happens almost in a split second, because our sense of worth comes from comparing ourselves with others, is then we can get off track and we can go, therefore I'm better. Or conversely, the upside down pride, I can go, therefore I'm worthless. So you can see how it shuts everything down, doesn't it? So now we can't have fun cooking together. You can't have fun showing me how to cook. We miss out and we don't even know why. So there was a thing that I learned about this year that astonished me, and I had no idea that it even existed. And it's called something, it's something in psychology called implied criticism. Have you heard of that? Implied criticism? So it's where if you're really good at something, other people feel it as a criticism of their lack of ability. And I don't know, I must have been really oblivious to this, because where I was thinking I was sharing, other people were experiencing implied criticism. And it's a tragedy. So why that happens is because we've got the upside down pride, where anybody else's success just rubs our noses in the fact that we're a loser. Again, it's completely out of step with reality, isn't it? But what's happening there is the upside down pride, our sense of worth from the circumstances or from comparing ourselves to others. So I got into big trouble for being someone that went around doing implied criticism, because I was just trying to, share that, hey, I've done this and I've done that and I've fixed this thing for you. And I thought I was being all generous and helpful, and nobody else had to do all of that tedious stuff. but people's noses got out of joint because they thought it was an implied criticism of they weren't doing enough. And they couldn't even see that it was actually, I was just being generous. I was like, hey, I've done it, so you don't have to. Like I was genuinely happy to be able to, you know, do it for you guys. And it's like, what? You're upset? But you can see what a tangle we get into that, you know, imagine in our own life, so many things that we might take personally, like a criticism, actually other people are just trying to help us. And so here's another one of how we can tell we've got pride. Do you find it difficult to ask for help? Yeah, right, there you go. So who knew that was pride? But it's to do with how we view ourselves. So it goes really deep, doesn't it? So this conflation of when we're no good at something, then we think we are no good. When we're really good at something, we think we're better. That's the problem. So when they say pride is this puffed up sense of self-importance, it's not that we're actually good at something, it's that we ascribe then that we're worth more.
You know, Miffi,
So,
that reminds me, I was talking to my son about something I do with my adult son. And I said, well, aren't you happy that they've been successful at whatever it was? And he was like, no, it makes me furious that they were successful and I'm not. You know, it just went off the handle about the whole thing.
yeah, that's it. That's it. So that's the implied criticism at work there. And it's also that the comparing, the social status, always comparing ourselves. So what happens, we try and find lots of people that are inferior to us in whatever it is, in our career, for instance, so we feel okay. But then we'll notice someone who's superior to us in our career, and now we feel terrible. Up and down and up and down. We're never going to find equilibrium there. And when there's people on a similar level to us, instead of being able to share, we're antagonistic. So this, where it comes from, is this external comparison that we make. And what I've found, even just in worldly things, not necessarily a spiritual pursuit, but really top level athletes or cooks or painters or anyone who's really, really top level, they'll all say the competition isn't between you and others, but your personal best. You're trying to exceed your own personal best. And that, when you do that, there is a sense of satisfaction. But when you're trying to beat others, that satisfaction, it's there for a second and then it's over, and then you've got somebody else to beat. So there is real wisdom in that. I remember there was an Australian diving champion. I think he won the world diving things, you know, at the Olympics or something. And he must have had a nervous breakdown and then stopped for a while. And he came back to the sport after several years. And that's what he said, that he had to really investigate why he was diving. And number one, it was about the love of the sport. Just the sheer joy of being able to do it and do it really, really well. And then to try and better his own personal best, not be in competition with others. And the moment he started that comparison between himself and others, all of the tightness and the pressure would start coming on, and then he'd just go, no. So instead of quitting, so he quit to give himself some headspace, but then he figured out how to go, that's the wrong way of thinking, to bring it back within. So even there, in a sport where you think it's about a physical activity, it's not. It's all about the mind. It's all about what's happening inside. That's the real sport. Same with cycling. I watch the Tour de France and everything else I can get my eyes on in late night TV. It's not about cycling. It's about challenging yourself. And how you do it is through cycling or diving or meditation. you know, whatever it is, it's the inner competition that actually matters, not the external one. So things that we're good at, if you like doing them and you're good at it, do you let yourself feel really happy that you're good at it? Or do you kind of like, did your parents used to say, well, don't rest on your laurels. Don't get too up yourself. So this is a thing that, again, we might feel really happy that we're good at something, we enjoy doing it, but then it gets corrupted. Then we start feeling a bit arrogant or better than others. But we can notice when that happens. And one of the things that we can do, instead of going to that external one of comparing ourselves and using that comparison to bolster ourselves up, we can go the inner journey and we can go, I'll share it. So I'll share it with others. So anything that we're good at, then let's show others how to do it. Let's share the joy. Show how to, you know, share the cooking. Invite others to cook with you. Encourage others in cooking. So I think we can do that when we do legitimately recognize we're good at something and we love doing it. Then that comes naturally. Mostly it's to do with hobbies. And why? Because our sense of identity isn't so tied up with hobbies. We can be really crap at something and still love doing it and not feel like we're a worthless human being. So that was my next question to you. Is there something that you love doing that you're no good at? Can you think of anything that you love doing that you're absolutely no good at? Anyone? Oh, yes, Linda.
Singing.
Singing.
I love singing and I can't sing. And I'm always singing.
Excellent. That is a fantastic one. Actually, singing is brilliant. So in Australia, we've got a national choir called the Choir of Hard Knocks. And what it is a choir that's made up of homeless people. And so once a week, they get together and they sing. And I mean, the wonderful thing is, you know, Linda, isn't it? The bigger the choir, the less it matters whether you can sing or not. And as long as one person can sing and they're loud enough, you just naturally kind of fall in behind them anyway. And so this choir has been life-changing for people because literally you're creating harmony together. I mean, and there's something about that, you know, all the endorphins go off in your brain. And when you do things together like that, especially with singing, after a while, everybody's heartbeats synchronize. And so you get this really deep sense of social connection and a sense of worth, of being part of something, as you would know. So there you go. That's a fantastic one. And so with the Choir of Hard Knocks, this has like been a lifesaver for so many people because it's the one time each week where they feel part of something worthwhile, something to look forward to, something that's just so much fun. You're not judged, all of those things, while the rest of the life can be so difficult. And of course, it's not in whether you're good at it or not, is it? It's about, yeah. So, I mean, I really take heart from this. And I've noticed at Buddhist centers, people are so frightened of singing. I'm not sure if you're actually in person and live at your Dharma center yet, but at Lungri Tongpa Center, when we have pujas, everybody just whispers the prayers. No one wants to say, not a peep comes out of every. And like I lead the prayers, I have to look around sometimes, like, has everybody left? Is there nobody in the room? So what I've found is if I'm loud, everybody else comes in underneath that and is a little bit quieter. So I've got to be super loud so everybody else isn't so shy. And just encourage everyone. But why are we so terrified of singing in public. It's that pride, isn't it? We conflate I'm no good at singing with I'm no good. And it's so deep that we feel that if we sing badly, people will laugh at us, as if that changes who we are, someone else's reaction to us, as if that has any bearing on anything. But it's because we're so entrenched of who we are is by how other people see us. And then we miss the whole joy of singing, which is so much fun. And it's so good for your health. And especially singing prayers, you're actually got the Buddha's words, the mantras resonating in your body physically. Like, it's profound what happens. I think there's a movie, isn't there, about a fairly wealthy woman who just loved singing, an opera singer, and she was terrible at it, but her husband loved her so much he just supported her in her folly. It's so sweet. I mean, that should give us a lot of hope. So there's another one of how we can see how profoundly this affects us with pride. There's been this show on Australian TV recently about literacy and adults who cannot read or write. It's called Lost for Words. And they're going through a 9-week program of learning how to read and write to raise their literacy skills. So they apparently in Australia, 43% of the adult population doesn't have the literacy skills to get through daily life. 43%. It's just astonishing. So for ages, I thought in Australia, 1 in 10 people were illiterate. So that's on the very basic level of not being able to read or write at all, 1 in 10. But functionally literate or functionally illiterate in that it's a strain to be able to read things. You don't enjoy reading. You get all, you're looking at the bus timetable or the train timetable of all the stations. It's all just a blur. You hate shopping because you can't read all the stuff on the labels. Doing forms online is just absolute torture. All of this points to not being functionally literate. And 43% of Australians fall into that category. And what struck me about this show is the deep sense of shame that these adults had, of shame and humiliation of not being able to read or write and hiding it from others. Is just utterly heartbreaking. From not being good at something and then being laughed at because of it, then you take that on as I am no good. And it's not an intellectual thing that happens. It just happens really, really deep because automatically we ascribe our worth by how others treat us. So this shame, oh my gosh, so painful and so deep, like really deep hurt. So in a way, you could say it comes from being laughed at, from humiliation from others. But why does that humiliation stick? Why does it hurt us? Why don't we go, oh, don't be stupid. It's just that I can't read or write. I'm actually really smart. So why does it affect us? So it's only later on in the episode. So one guy from one of the Pacific Islands, he was called pre-literacy, so he wasn't even on the lowest level of literacy. So I was having these assumptions about him, and then it turns out, not of course, but he actually is fluent in 5 languages. He can speak 5 languages, he just can't read or write. And there was really deep within me this judgment of his intelligence. It's terrible, isn't it? I was so ashamed of myself. So this is a thing that we all do. We judge our worth by what we can do or what we can't do. And then later on, you find your assumptions. You go, oh my gosh, I can only speak 1 language and he can speak 5. So where is the worth of a human being? And yet we do it again and again because everything comes from comparison from outside. So as they were going through the program and learning and being encouraged to learn and having that experience of being a beginner but not being humiliated, then you can kind of separate out, I'm no good at something, but it's in the effort, in the joy of actually achieving something that you get your sense of worth, not in the comparison. So just being amongst a group of other beginners also learning and seeing how extraordinary each of those human beings were, that's what gave everybody confidence. And that's what gives us confidence in a Dharma center, isn't it? We've all got our problems, but then we come together and we see, oh, everybody has problems and difficulties, just like me. All right. Any other questions or comments about these social prides? Oh, yeah. Abelardo and then Kristen. Yep.
Yeah, what I have identified is that this sense of self-worth is conditioned very early in childhood, because many parents, instead of conveying to a child their intrinsic worth and that they're loved unconditionally, they condition their love to achievements in different areas. And so that sets in a whole pattern that then you know, the individual will go through different stages of life, then go to school, and then comparing with peers. And
that's right. You're right, Abelardo.
Yeah.
It's because, you know, we pass down our own difficulties, don't we? And we pass down our own status anxiety. And so if your parents judge you by how much you achieve, if your parents are so proud of you when you do well and not proud of you when you don't, if your parents have based their own sense of worth by how you are. See, this is, so it goes down generationally, but not all parents are like that. And many times parents will come to a crossroads, say they find out that their son or daughter is gay, and then there's this crossroads. Do you say, I accept you for who you are, even though it's a surprise? Or do you go, no son of mine, no daughter of mine? And right there, that's on the parents of their sense of worth comes from their offspring. So you can see, I mean, it's so complex, isn't it? But it just takes one person. We just having that surprise going, oh, my son's gay or my daughter's gay. What a surprise. Oh, I kind of knew. I love them anyway. How amazing. How can I support them? So there's a big difference between sharing and helping them or having who they are reflect on me. So this is one of those big Buddhist psychological life hacks that if you devote your life to others, you'll always be happy. It's just that simple. It cuts through everything. You don't have to have the intellectual understanding. You don't even have to understand the psychology. It's just the attitude. And with that attitude, all the good stuff comes and all the problems will fall away. So it's a good point that you brought up, though, Abelardo. So I wanted to talk about then the other four types of pride just really quickly because it leads to the main one. So we have wrong pride, which is just where here I've depicted it as a hunting lodge. You know, we're really proud of some skill or ability, but it's actually a negative thing. Like we're a great shoplifter. I'm so proud I'm a great shoplifter. We have pretentiousness. So I've depicted this one as a doll's house where we are proud of qualities that we don't actually possess. And anyone who's been to an art gallery opening can recognize the pretentiousness and also see the intimidation underneath it. And that takes us to the false humility, or inverted pride, upside down pride, where we feel very, very small. But that feeling of being very, very small is overwhelming. It's all encompassing. It's where martyr syndrome comes in, where we only feel worthwhile if we're giving ourselves to people all the time, if people need us, if we are suffering, if we have problems, if others have problems and need us. So we rely on our problems for a sense of worth. We rely on, oh, well, I had a difficult childhood, so I'm more important. Or, oh, I've got this particular brain neurology thing happening, and so I'm important. So we get our sense of pride and worth from the problem. It's quite a distorted thing. So the upside down pride is a real biggie. And then even more is what's called egocentricity, where, and it's the most subtle, the most pervasive, the deepest. It goes right to the very root of all of our problems, this self-grasping. So we have, because we have innate ignorance, just not knowing, then we develop a wrong view, and then we grasp at that wrong view. And why I've depicted this as a hotel is that actually who we are, we're just travelers through our life. You know, we're travelers in this combination of body and mind. That's who we are. We're just like we're staying at a hotel, and soon we'll move and we'll leave behind everything that we thought was us. So the two out of these, the upside down pride, the false humility, and egocentricity, they're the real biggies. The false humility we can find where we know we have it, where we have an idea, oh, I'm special, but I'm special in a really screwed up way. And we think, therefore, I'm more important. So I'm special because this tragedy happened in my life, or I'm special because today I had a really bad day and it's worse than everybody else's. So we have the problem, and I'm not belittling, I'm not minimizing the problem. But what happens is we have the problem, and then we use that to bolster up or puff ourselves up and make us distinct from others. So I have a really dear friend who I've had very many ups and downs with, and she has over the years always found, oh, this is what my problem is, or that is what it is, this psychological thing, or that diagnosis. And the diagnosis gives her a sense of liberation. This is what's wrong with me, and this is all the things that I can do. And then very soon after that, within a matter of weeks, she'll become completely alienated from everybody, because she's taken that diagnosis and gone, therefore I am special. And the moment you say, therefore I am special, you've separated yourself off from everybody else, because you're better, you're special. And the moment you're separate from everybody else, you're lonely, desperately lonely. And I've seen this cycle happen again and again, like through this diagnosis, that diagnosis, this Buddhist lineage, that Buddhist lineage, this job, that job, each time that now I can actually see it as a cycle. So you recognize a conventional truth about yourself, and that gives you something to work with, but it's a conventional truth. It's not an ultimate truth. But then we ascribe that to give us this sense of of worth in comparison to others. And so, yeah, we do get a sense of self-importance. True. And exactly at the same time that we get that sense of self-importance, we become alienated. It's a terrible payoff, and it just doesn't work, no matter how many times. So then you've got to find a new thing. So you find a new thing, you go, oh, now I've got this diagnosis, my people. So the way out of that is to find, yeah, you can have a conventional truth, and you can find, this is my problem, this is my diagnosis, whatever it is. But instead of having it separate you from others, you can find your tribe. And so now we have connection. And so instead of feeling in comparison, now you extend that sense of being special to everybody. So you get some equilibrium there. So all the Buddhist teachings on equanimity come in here. And I was thinking this morning about how, if you're going to go do public speaking, and one of the things people say is, I'll just imagine everybody nude. So I tried that once, and that really threw me off my game. It did not work. But then I thought, well, what's behind it? So imagining everybody nude is actually a way of recognizing under the clothes, we're all the same. And actually under the skin color, we're all the same. So it's a very clumsy way of developing a sense of equanimity. That underneath, we're all the same, in that we all suffer and we don't want to. We all yearn for happiness and peace and safety, and yet we cannot find it. We all, want these things, but we don't know how to go about it. And we all have the potential, but we haven't seen it. So actually developing equanimity is far more effective, and that's really what it's aiming at. It's like we're trying to have this shortcut to equanimity, that underneath we're all the same in these areas. And all the other areas we may be very, very different. But if we've got that equanimity, that's what connects us with others. That's what opens our heart. That's what stabilizes us in our relationships. And then we can look at the conventional differences and go, yep, I'm your superior here and I'm your inferior here. No problem. But it's tricky to catch, to catch yourself out there. Now I have a little, here we are. How to deconstruct it. Who am I? Who am I really? So if we're trying to figure out who we are, many times we alight on, well, whatever our psychological diagnosis is. So you can think, if you've had one, you can think how much of your sense of who you are is tied up in that, and how much of a sense of self-importance do you get from it, as opposed to how much of a sense of connection do you get from it. Then we might think, oh, well, we're our body. I mean, many times we don't think it, we just act like that. How do we know? Because it matters to us how we look. That's one thing. So how much time do we spend on how we look, and how do we feel about it? Are we perpetually dissatisfied, or do we think we scrub up okay? Do we have a purpose for how we look? What's the purpose? So much of our identity is bound up in our looks. in my 20s, I was making costumes and circus costumes and couture, and so I would dress up. And so in my 20s, I looked quite good. And I remember going to an event where I'd made this amazing outfit and I was kind of the star of the show. And on an objective kind of basis at that event, I was probably the most good-looking person there. And luckily, as a costumer, you have a little bit of a sense of objectivity in a working kind of way. And so I was also able to notice that because I was the most good-looking person there, every other woman there was miserable. So my effect of looking good brought pain to others, brought misery to others, because they're all comparing themselves to, you know, my outfit or my hair, and it didn't measure up. So that was such a big wake-up call to me that I just thought there's no point trying to be the best looking ever, because you're just going to upset people. That's not what you want to do. What you want to do is have a purpose for it, to attract people, to be a conversation starter, to encourage people, to show their personality, all these other things, but not to look the best. So, I mean, the wonderful thing about that was after that, I was able to relax. I didn't have to be the best looking. Oren.
I have so many responses. I'm being quiet because I'm flooded with.
Oh, go for it.
Okay, but this is a question. Now you provoke me to ask you a question. This is, I've had many questions, but when you dressed up and went to this event and felt like you were the best looking person because you had this extraordinary, you spent a lot of time figuring out how to look great. And then the result is that you feel like you made all the other women feel inferior. Did you in some way, it sounds like you were saying that you were blaming yourself for something, or that you were saying, were you saying I shouldn't do this? Because when you dressed up, were you?
It's in the purpose.
It's intention. Because you were doing it to make yourself feel wonderful and feel like, I mean.
I know. But there you have it. That is the question, Oren. What was my motivation? And so what I noticed was my motivation had just been really automatic. I want to look the best.
Oh.
It wasn't just I want to look good, but it was I want to look better than everybody else. It wasn't even a thought, I want to look better than everybody else, but that was just this unconscious motivation. I want to look good. How do I know? Because I look better than everybody else. And because of being a costumer, and a lot of it is to do with looks, there was this kind of objective thing where actually in terms of an analysis, hair, makeup, deportment, originality, blah, 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 all of those things, figure, I was the best looking. So that's just a conventional truth, because I had the most skills and probably the most talent at the time, and youth on my side and all of those things. But what I noticed was the purpose I was doing it was so I would feel good. And so it was this separating myself from others. And that's where it was like a fork in the road. And so after that, then I thought, okay, what is the purpose of dressing up? Because if it's just to look good, this comparison with others, and you look around, you go, oh, well, she's fatter than me, she's older than me, she's poorer than me, I'm okay. That's our basic thing, this comparison. And because it's so low level, we never notice it working. But because I took it to the nth degree, I noticed that's what was happening, and the misery that causes others. So I look at all the influencers online, all the beautiful people, and they just want to feel good, don't they? But what their effect is to make just about every young girl feel inadequate. Isn't that horrible? But that they don't know that that's their effect, that they're more beautiful that the Kardashians look, the more inadequate young girls feel. That's just how it works. But if you notice in yourself, oh my gosh, that's how I'm contributing to the world, then just like you said, Oren, what's the motivation? So I changed my motivation. So I now, when I dress, I try and make it an offering. And I try and make it something to inspire others and include others. And so I've always put a little something stupid in, or something a bit silly as a conversation starter. So I have a handbag that looks like a great big orange steamboat. It's a 3-dimensional, and I've got another handbag that's like a black teapot. And so they're silly. They're not chic at all. They're silly, but they're excellent conversation starter. So whenever I'm going out, into the world, I'll put on my silly handbag, and guaranteed everybody will say something about it. And there's your way in.
Can I ask a question? Because this came up before. Okay. So all these people that I know on Facebook showing the trips that they're on, the parties that the groups that they're in, all the tend to make me feel like, especially during COVID, when I was practically, I was socializing with the pigeons in the backyard that I could see through my window. That was my whole world, is I would watch the pigeons. And then but seeing all these things that everybody else is doing, are those people, what is their motivation? What are the motivations of all the people that are showing all the wonderful trips they're in and all the parties and all the, yeah.
So we can't tell, but we could probably surmise by just our own experience. So one thing is, like, you're experiencing a form of like implied criticism that other people's success in life then just reflects how alienated and stuck we are. So then you've got to ask, so all of these people posting everything, one thing is that they're trying to create their own life. And with this egocentricity, this self-grasping ignorance, one thing that we try and do is that we think we are our activities, we are our virtual self, we are how we look. And so if I present a perfect one, then I will feel perfect. Of course, it doesn't work that way. And in fact, it works the opposite, which is a real tragedy. So there might be some people out there that share what they're doing because they're just exuberant about it. But you'll know because they'll want you to get involved. They'll actually want to share and have some interaction, not present. So with Facebook and everything, life has become very performative. So we are how we perform, how we present ourselves to an incredible extent now. And of course, we know how that makes us feel alienated and disconnected. So this leads us to the positive prides, which, oh my gosh, in 10 minutes or less, the positive prides, pride in our innate human intelligence of being a human being. A really good example of this kind of pride that's positive is the Black Lives Matter. So Black Lives Matter comes out of this whole, I mean, what do I know about it? But this is kind of what I've surmised, is that this whole terrible historical background of Black people being seen as not people, as being less. And here in Australia, in fact, Australian Aborigines weren't counted as human beings until 1967, the year that I was born. Before that, Indigenous Australians were counted in the census as part of flora and fauna. I mean, I just find this so outrageous. So to redress the balance, you've got to say Black Lives Matter. Human beings matter, including these ones that up until very recently and probably in some areas are counted as not human. So this is a really positive pride of being a human being. We have to recognize it in ourselves and then respect others. And we can't respect others unless we recognize it in ourselves. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama calls this pride in our innate human intelligence. It's there, it's innate. We have to have developed this real self-respect, an objective respect of being human. Being human is incredible. And so those people in the literacy program, they didn't recognize their innate human intelligence of being a human being is worthwhile. It's amazing. They couldn't access that because of the humiliation. The other one, from a Buddhist point of view, positive pride of recognizing our fundamental purity, that the nature of our mind is pure, is clear, is good. The innate qualities of a human being are good. Not broken, not evil, but good. Given just neutral circumstances, people will act well. Their naturally good qualities will come out. People only act badly because they're under duress, because they're in trauma, the trauma of society. So a pride in our purity, if we really recognized the nature of our mind, we would, not only would we never be intimidated, but we would have confidence. There's another positive pride, which is pride in our actions. And so this is to actually recognize when you are superior in something, to have pride in that action. If you're good at cooking, to go, yes, I'm good at cooking, and rejoice. Take delight in it. So instead of having it to make yourself feel puffed up and important, delight in it. Delight in your virtue, delight in your good-heartedness, in trying to be a good human being, in all the effort that you put in, not the results, but the effort. That's the thing to really delight in. And what happens when we have pride in our positive actions is that naturally we want to share. We want to include others in it. So that gives us a whole lot of joy, and it stops us kind of corrupting it with the puffed up pride. In athletics, I've seen this, I've read articles of great athletes. They have to retire so early, don't they? And many of them, the ones that don't have anything else apart from their sport, get really depressed and often even suicidal. And the ones that manage to make something of the rest of their life are the ones that then give back. And so instead of just, it's all about me and winning, it's like, okay, I'm an elite athlete. I'm going to coach the Little Leagues. I'm going to set up some workshops to help athletes start a second business or become motivational speakers, or to go overseas and teach someone in Bangladesh how to do skateboarding, or, you know, whatever it is, to give back. That's what turns it around. So the pride in your positive actions, it's a really big thing to share in our skills, to share our skills with others. And that will save us, stop us getting corrupted. The fourth one is the pride, which is a sense of confidence, of being fierce, the Bodhisattva warrior. So it has immense power behind us and perseverance and confidence that we can overcome delusion. We can overcome our afflictive states of mind. Courage. So this comes not from feeling puffed up and better than others. It doesn't come from a pep talk from others. It's a result. And it's a result of sharing. So that's what a positive pride is. And it's really quite different in tone and character. And we can do it. It doesn't necessarily have to be something super, super profound. It can just be a skill that you can share with others, like teaching your nieces and nephews to cook. I mean, this is if someone had taught me to cook when I was little, this is an essential life skill. And you can take continuous delight in that. So positive pride, it's delight. It's rejoicing. You can take continuous delight in being able to share that kind of skill. Life-changing skill. So positive prides, how much time do we spend on those? You know, we can pull down the negative ones, but so in the worksheet for overcoming pride and developing self-esteem, so as the second worksheet, the first page has the 7 negative prides and then these 4 positive ones to start remembering about every day. So not just focusing on the negative ones, but we've got to bring forth these positive ones. And then the questions, they're really easy. Like question 4, what skills do you have that you can share with others? Just that simple. And how do you encourage your friends when they're anxious or worried? How do you encourage others? And you might notice that the best way to encourage them is to just give them confidence that they'll be able to work it out, that they can figure it out, that of course they'll come to the right decision, of course they'll be able to do it. So we give them the confidence to connect with their potential, rather than, oh, you look great, you're good at this, you're better than so and so, you know, all the external things. That what really works is this helping people come at it from the inside, from connecting with their potential, not the comparison. So they're really simple questions to get through during the week. And I wanted to just do a really short meditation and then we'll dedicate the merits. Are there final questions or comments though before we do that? Anything? Yeah, Oren, yeah.
Okay, so when you were talking about trying to help a friend and you were saying you don't want to say to them, oh, you're better than them. So what kind of help are you thinking? What kind of support are you suggesting?
Well, to do with the positive prides that they have, that they have that natural goodness and innate human intelligence to draw on, to be able to figure things out for themselves. So it's coming at those inner qualities, rather than the whole thing where we just, you know, people say, oh, I look fat in this, and you go, oh, no, you're not. So want to say, for an example, with the esteem, someone last week was talking to me about how they just didn't like their look. So instead of going, oh, no, you look great, you go, well, your legs may not be perfect compared to Kim Kardashian, but your legs can carry you. They can take you to the Dharma Center. They can take you on a walk with your friends. They can help you keep fit. You can feel strong and grounded. What are the legs for? So it's a really different approach than just the comparison. So probably every time we notice that we're doing the comparisons, that's where the little red flag should come up. Instead, it's like, what is it for? What is our body for? Is much better than how does it look? Because how does it look? It's never going to look great. In fact, it's only going to look worse from here on in. So we can forget about that. But what it's for, that can get better and better. And in fact, there's a great New York documentary called Advanced Style of the New York ladies in their 90s. And so their bodies are like melting off them. They're completely decrepit. And yet it's one of the most inspiring documentaries I've ever seen. Because it's about actual just human expression and bringing joy to others. What's your body for? It's not about comparison. So I hope that kind of helps, Oren. But the 4 positive prides, connecting with our inner qualities and developing those and sharing. So our last very fast meditation, loving oneself and others. So I just put this nice little art picture up, because when we're out and about, even though we may feel alone, even if we're in lockdown and we're in our little flat, we are surrounded by everybody, just like this on a Sunday afternoon. Everyone's around us. Some are close, some are distant physically, some are close, some are distant emotionally. We have those that we're connected with in our heart, friends, family. We have many, many strangers, and we have those that we have real problems, difficulties with, even frightened of. But here we are, all the same in wanting happiness, in having a good life, all the same in not wanting problems, and all trying to figure out a way to do it. This is what we have in common. We're all the same. So what I'd like you to do, just to end today's class, is to think that, recognize we're surrounded by all living beings all the time. Think of those that you know and love, that you really care for and you wish the best for. It may be family, it may be best friends. How you really wish them the best. And feel that feeling in your heart as warm, glowing golden light. And feel how it's this beautiful, rich, golden light that fills your whole body. It's glowing there in your heart, these natural good feelings that you have. Feel how good it is to wish them the very best. And as that feeling spreads from your heart and fills your whole body, feel that you also love and care about yourself, that you accept yourself as you are, with all your present faults and shortcomings, and also recognizing your potential for Buddhahood, to become free of afflictions. And even though you may habitually feel a bit critical or judgmental towards yourself, really wish yourself happiness and that you have everything that you need. You have all the support, that you have everything that you need to feel happy, loved, supported. And now, just as you love your friends and just as you can extend this love to yourself, then have it extend to all the strangers, and really feel that loving kindness as rich golden light radiating out from every pore of your body, touching everybody. And think, may all your thoughts be positive, or your experiences good. May you be free of problems. May your lives be long and peaceful. May you quickly reach enlightenment. And have this thought spread to everybody with this golden light. And then also feel that radiant energy of love from your heart extending even to the ones that you have problems with. Really wish them to be free of confusion and arrogance and self-centeredness that drives them to act the way that they do. And feel that radiant energy of love flowing to them as well, and think, may you be free of problems. May you be free of alienation. May you have everything that you need: love, support, health, long life. May you become enlightened. So feel this radiant warmth of loving kindness spreading through you towards yourself, towards your friends and family, to all the strangers, to all the difficult, challenging, troublesome people, for the whole world. Your love is an unlimited spring of good energy. There's no need to worry that it'll run out. And recognizing that this is like the love of the Buddha. The Buddha sees no faults. When the Buddha gazes at sentient beings, they don't see faults. They see potential Buddhas. They see your qualities, your potential. They recognize troublesome actions and behavior, but they never see faults. They see right to your heart. So we can dedicate the merits of today, that we too can have the Buddha's vision of loving kindness and see only potential Buddhas. See living, breathing beings who have feelings, who matter, who have worth, and who all have the potential for enlightenment, just like we do. So let's dedicate the merits. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings abide, may I too remain to dispel the sorrows of the world. So I hope that dedication has a whole new feel to it now. And we've covered quite a lot today. We've looked at the social prides. We've looked at the other ones, and in particular, the upside down pride and the really deep one, egocentricity, that self-grasping that grasps at our identity that's quite situational as being the real me, whereas actually the real me is like the Buddha sees, with no faults, potential Buddhas. So if we take that as our basis, then we can develop bodhisattva pride. Be fierce, be courageous. So there's the worksheet to do. There's a more extended version of the loving oneself and others meditation. And next week, we're going to dive right into love versus attachment. We had a little talk just before class about attachment to stuff, how to be generous, we'll even bring in a little bit about dumpster diving. And so have a really wonderful week and delight in your qualities. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Miffi. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Miffi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miffi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wiley, for reminding me.